We begin this Sunday morning with just 58 days remaining until Election Day on November 5th, with at least 25 states starting to send out mail-in ballots to voters this month. Former President Trump and Vice President Harris are set to take part in a presidential debate hosted by ABC News this Tuesday night in the battleground state of Pennsylvania, which is seen as a crucial state to winning the White House. Among the main topics expected to be covered, the state of the economy and immigration. Under the Biden-Harris administration, overall inflation is up over 19%, while real wages are down nearly 2%. The national debt is at $35.3 trillion and $7.5 trillion in new debt added in less than 4 years. Meanwhile, over 8 million migrants have been encountered illegally crossing the southern border under the Biden-Harris administration, with nearly 2 million having evaded apprehension and disappearing into the United States. And the White House has lost track of approximately 320,000 unaccompanied minors, while the continuing border crisis has cost taxpayers an estimated $150 billion per year. Vice President Harris's policy changes are also expected to be under scrutiny at the debate Tuesday night, including no longer supporting Medicare for all, backing funding for a border wall and law enforcement, supporting fracking and not pushing an electrical vehicle mandate or mandatory gun buyback programs. Joining me now with a preview of Tuesday's debate is former Housing and Urban Development Secretary Dr. Ben Carson. Doctor, thanks so much for joining us. You've been on the debate stage. You've been there. You've been a candidate. You've been there with Donald Trump. What do you think is going to happen with this debate Tuesday night? And what do each of the candidates need to do to be successful?
Well, I think it's going to be one of the most consequential debates ever, because people will finally get a chance to hear from Kamala Harris what she believes. And all this business about flip-flopping, you have to wonder if she has really flip-flopped, because she said that her values have not changed. So what kind of values are we talking about? You know, values that, as the DA in San Francisco led to a policy where people can go into stores and take $900 worth of stuff with little or no consequences, or values that lead to not deporting drug dealers who are resulting in the death of American citizens, or the kind of values that allow you to kill babies right up until the time of birth, and maybe even beyond that time, opposing legislation that would save babies that survive abortion attempts. You have to wonder about that. Values that lead you to mandate what kind of car people should drive or what kind of stoves they should have, as opposed to letting the free market forces. So what you're going to see in the debate is Donald Trump running on his past policies and Kamala Harris running away from her past policies. So it should make for a very, very interesting evening.
Yeah, you kind of wonder, is Kamala Harris going to debate Kamala Harris? I mean, because her policies on the core issues, major flip-flops, and one of those things that I think is going to be at the forefront of a lot of people's mind has to do with, and you're a doctor, Medicare for all. Is she really truly supporting the notion that she would get rid of private insurance for more than 100 million Americans and make sure that it's a government-run healthcare system? Because that's what she has advocated for.
Well, she has advocated that in the past. Of course, she will probably try to run away from it. You know, interestingly enough, those who are students of history know that Vladimir Lenin said that socialized medicine is the linchpin for socialism. This is the way that you bring it in. When you have control of people's health, you have control of them. And, you know, we spend an enormous amount of money on healthcare in this country, more than any other country. $13,100 per capita per year. Can you imagine what you could do with that money in an efficient system? An efficient system that used healthcare savings accounts or something of that nature, where there was real accountability and transparency. Those are the kinds of things that obviously need to be talked about and explored to a much greater degree than we are now. But socialized medicine has only led to much poorer distribution of medicine everywhere it's been tried, and the same thing would happen in this country as well.
Now, Vice President Harris has been complicit in this open border policy, which has led to millions of people flowing into the United States illegally. You were the former Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. I got to imagine that the pressure on the housing system, particularly low-income housing, by the millions, has affected the supply and demand, has affected the price. People complain about the pricing of housing, but when you pour 8-10 million people into the system, guess what? Prices are probably going to go up, right?
No question about it. And recognize also that during the Trump administration, mortgage rates were down below 3%. So people with mortgage rates of that level are not going to give up that house and put it on the market to try to move up to a 7% mortgage. That makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. Plus, having so many people in the market for the few houses that are there just drives the inflationary spiral even higher. And we must recognize that owning a home is a major component of the American dream. And we're pushing that further and further out of reach for so many, particularly young people. And we really need to start thinking about what can we do that works for all of the people. That really is the key. You know, it's not about Democrats and Republicans. It's about those who care about the people and who want a country that is of, for, and by the people, and those who want a country that is of, for, and by the government. And it doesn't necessarily mean that the progressives are bad people. It just means they have a very different concept of what America should be, and it varies markedly from what our founders intended. And they have forgotten about our Declaration of Independence, our founding document, which tells us that our rights come from our Creator, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And the government should be there to facilitate that.
Well, Doctor, you've been on the forefront of these issues. You've been out there on the debate stage. You've been out there as a candidate yourself. Very quickly, a final guess on what's going to happen Tuesday night.
Well, I think Kamala Harris is going to try to get under Donald Trump's skin. That's what the preparation is all about. How do you get under his skin? Also, you know, she needs to be told what her policies are, because she doesn't really know what they are, or nobody else does either. Donald Trump doesn't have to prep, because the truth is always the truth. You don't have to try to figure out what things will resonate with people. You just say who you are. He's very transparent. And I think the people will appreciate that. So it's going to be a widely watched debate. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think authenticity wins the day, the hearts and minds of the American people. They always see that with Donald Trump. Kamala Harris, maybe not so much. So, former Housing and Urban Development Secretary Dr. Ben Carson, thank you so much for joining us on Sunday Morning Futures.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.